you're in luck now. See, way back then they recognized that the sicker a man got, the more of this program he's going to accept. It's true yet today. And whether a person has to quit upon a spiritual basis or not is depending upon the extent that he already has alcoholism. The more severe it is, the more spirituality. Being certain he wants to stop, you can go to him with his volume as joyfully as though you had struck oil. He may not share your enthusiasm, but he's practically sure to read the book and may go for the program at once. If he does not, you will probably not have long to wait. Again, you should not crowd him. Let him decide for himself. Cheerfully see him through more sprees. Talk about his condition or this book only when he raises the issue. In some cases, it may be better to let someone outside the family present the book. They can urge action without arousing hostility. If your husband is otherwise a normal individual, your chances are good at this stage. You would suppose that men in the fourth classification would be quite hopeless, but that is not so. Many of Alcoholics Anonymous were like that. Everybody had given them up. Defeat seemed certain, yet often such men had spectacular and powerful recoveries. There are exceptions. Some men have been so impaired by alcohol that they cannot stop. Sometimes there are cases where alcoholism is complicated by other disorders. A good doctor or psychiatrist can tell you whether these complications are serious. In any event, try to have your husband read this book. Look how many times they have emphasized the necessity of this book. Do you know, if you go outside of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and you talk to anybody else and you tell them that you're in AA, you know what they say? Oh, you're in that 12-step program, huh? You come into AA, we're supposed to be in a 12-step program. They say, never mind the steps, just go to meetings. The people in the program don't refer to it as 12 steps, the people outside of it do. And you want to know something else? You go to any other program that uses the program of AA, the 12 steps, and that's all they use. They concentrate more on the big book than the program of AA itself. His reaction may be one of enthusiasm. If he is already committed to an institution but can convince you and your doctor he means business, give him a chance to try our method, unless the doctor thinks his mental condition too abnormal or dangerous. We make this recommendation with some confidence. For years we have been working with alcoholics committed to institutions. Since this book was first published, AA has released thousands of alcoholics from asylums and hospitals of every kind. The majority have never returned. The power of God goes deep. Who freed the people from mental health institutions? AA. Previous to AA, where did you go if you drank too much? Right, mental health institutions. You may have the reverse situation on your hands. Perhaps you have a husband who is at large but who should be committed. Some men cannot or will not get over alcoholism. When they become too dangerous, we think the kind thing is to lock them up. But of course a good doctor should always be consulted. The wives and children of such men suffer horribly, but not more than the men themselves. It's hard for some people to believe that. But sometimes you must start life anew. We know women who have done it. If such women adopt a spiritual way of life, their road will be smoother. If your husband is a drinker, you probably worry over what other people are thinking and you hate to meet your friends. Exactly true today. This next information in these paragraphs is going to describe to you the shame-based program that we are in. Do you know that alcoholism is still shame-based? That's why most of the people we get come from courts or employers. They're forced in here. People who have reputations, a higher percentage of alcoholics are in a higher economic brackets untouched because they can remain hidden. It's shame-based. We have done that in our culture. They even want to go a little farther. If you get convicted of DWI, they want to put a bumper sticker on you. Let everybody know you're drunk. We're back to the days, in the colonial days, when if a person was a drunk, what did they do? They put him in a stocks in the center of town, said drunkard. Everybody walked by and laughed. He didn't care. You let him out, he went right back to the barroom. Boy, did I develop a tolerable thirst. You can't shame an alcoholic. It's a disease. Can you shame a diabetic? What if we made diabetes shame-based? If you had diabetes, we called it a shame-based disease. You draw more and more into yourself, and you think everyone is talking about conditions at your home. You see that? Hide the alcoholic. You avoid the subject of drinking even with your own parents. You did not know what to tell the children. When your husband is bad, you become a trembling recluse, wishing the telephone had never been invented. We find that most of this embarrassment is unnecessary. While you need not discuss your husband at length, you can quietly let your friends know the nature of his illness, but you must be on guard not to embarrass or harm your husband. When you have carefully explained to such people that he is a sick person, you will have created a new atmosphere. Barriers which have sprung up between you and your friends will disappear with the growth of sympathetic understanding. You will no longer be self-conscious or feel that you must apologize as though your husband were a weak character. He may be anything but that. Your new courage, good nature, and lack of self-consciousness will do wonders for you socially. The same principle applies in dealing with the children. Unless they actually need protection from their father, it is best not to take sides in any argument he has with them while drinking. Use your energies to promote a better understanding all around. Then that terrible tension which grips the home of every problem drinker will be lessened. I did a project at the Midway Mall in Elyria, Ohio, and it was along with several social service organizations. And that's when I first started an agency in Lorain County. And we had a booth, and above the booth said, Lorain County Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse. And all the people came down to all the other booths, and I said to my secretary, I can tell every family coming through this mall that has an alcohol problem. And she said, you can, God, how? I said, I'll show you. And I watched and I said, there goes a family with an alcohol problem. 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 She said, how do you know? How do you know you're right? I said, now watch this. I said, see these people coming down visiting these various booths? I said, yes. I said, they stand in front of every one of them. They look up and they see the booth on alcoholism. They go back to Fannie Farmer's Candy, over to the shoe store, and come down to the next booth, and they skirt the booth on alcoholism. Do you know why? They are so self-conscious of the fact that there's an alcohol in their problem in their family, they don't want anybody to see them standing in front of that booth. A little while later, I heard her, there goes one. There goes one. She learned well. It's where we're at. Frequently, you have felt obliged to tell your husband's employer and his friends that he was sick, when as a matter of fact, he was tight. Avoid answering these inquiries as much as you can. Whenever possible, let your husband explain. In other words, they're saying, when he calls up and says, call up the boss and tell him I'm sick, say, no, you call him up and tell him. Hey? What happens? The family starts absorbing the same illness that the husband has, the lying, the cheating, the defects that occur. Where alcohol is, we become very selfish. Huh? Your desire to protect him should not cause you to lie to people when they have a right to know where he is and what he is doing. Discuss this with him when he is sober and in good spirits. Ask him what you should do if he places you in such a position again, but be careful not to be resentful about the last time he did so. There is another paralyzing fear, and this happens to an awful lot of families. You may be afraid your husband will lose his position. You are thinking of the disgrace and hard times which will befall you and the children. This experience may come to you, or you may already have it had several times. Should it happen again, regard it in a different light. Maybe it will prove a blessing. It may convince your husband he wants to stop drinking forever. And now you know that he can stop if he will. Time after time, this apparent calamity has been a boon to us, for it opened up a path which led to the discovery of God. We have elsewhere remarked how much better life is when lived on a spiritual plane. If God can solve the age-old riddle of alcoholism, he can solve your problems too. We wives found that like everybody else, we were afflicted with pride, self-pity, vanity, and all the things which go up to make the self-centered person. And we were not above selfishness or dishonesty. As our husbands began to apply spiritual principles in their lives, we began to see the desirability of doing so too. Bring the family into treatment. At first, some of us did not believe we needed this help. We thought on the whole we were pretty good women, capable of being nicer if our husbands stopped drinking, but it was a silly idea we were too good to need God. Now we try to put spiritual principles to work in every department of our lives. When we do that, we find it solves our problems too. The ensuing lack of fear, worry, and hurt feelings is a wonderful thing. We urge you to try our program, for nothing will be so helpful to your husband as a radically changed attitude toward him, which God will show you how to have. Go along with your husband if you possibly can. Who knows what how the word Al-Anon came to be? When they talk about Al-Anon, what does that mean? No, they took it from the word Alcoholics Anonymous. Al-Anon. The first syllables of each word. Alcoholics Anonymous, Al-Anon. They abbreviated. Read the history of Lois Remembers. It's a great book. Gives you a lot of information about Bill Wilson. That's how they got the name. They took the syllables from Alcoholics Anonymous and called it Al-Anon. Same program, steps. A lot of Al-Anons don't know that today. They start dealing with other issues and get into psychology. If you and your husband find a solution for the pressing problem of drink, you are of course going to be very happy, but all problems will not be solved at once. Seed has started to sprout in the new soil, but growth has only begun. What they're telling you is the family is going to recover slowly also. In spite of your newfound happiness, there will be ups and downs. Many of the old problems will still be with you. This is as it should be, because you're going to be tested by fire for growth. The faith and sincerity of both you and your husband will be put to the test. These workouts should be regarded as part of your education, for thus you will be learning to live. You will make mistakes, but if you are in earnest, they will not drag you down. Instead, you will capitalize them. A better way of life will emerge when they are overcome. Some of the snags you will encounter are irritation, hurt feelings, and resentments. These are things you're going to be confronted with. Irritation, hurt feelings, and resentments. Your husband will sometimes be unreasonable and you will want to criticize. Starting from a speck on the domestic horizon, great thunderclouds of dispute may gather. These family dissensions are very dangerous, especially to your husband. Often you must carry the burden of avoiding them or keeping them under control. Why? Because you don't have to worry about going out and getting drunk. You always have to keep uppermost in your hand. You may have to bite the bullet a few times just to keep him sober. Never forget that resentment is a deadly hazard to an alcoholic. We do not mean that you have to agree with your husband whenever there's an honest difference of opinion. Just be careful not to disagree in a resentful or critical spirit. This next paragraph I have used in counseling with families time and time again. I have used it with counseling families of alcoholics in the AA program and the Al-Anon program. It is a diffusing element that works. And any of you that are married or have family relationships, you can use it with parents also. Read this paragraph, underline it, and mark it well in your record so that if you need it, you can get back to it. You and your husband will find that you can dispose of serious problems easier than you can the trivial ones. Remember, it's the little things that get us. Next time you and he have a heated discussion, no matter what the subject, it should be the privilege of either to smile and say, here it goes, "This is getting serious. I'm sorry I got disturbed. Let's talk about it later." If your husband is trying to live on a spiritual basis, he will also be doing everything in his power to avoid disagreement or contention. A diffusing statement. I did a little survey here about 3 or 4 years ago with some people who were in the Al-Anon program, and I asked them about that, and about 90% of them didn't know it. After we started throwing big book sessions in Lorain County for Al-Anons, they also learned it so. Right, Al? Your husband knows he owes you more than sobriety. He wants to make good. Yet you must not expect too much. His ways of thinking and doing are the habits of years. Patience, tolerance, understanding, and love are the watchwords. Show him these things in yourself, and they will be reflected back to you from him. Live and let live is the rule. If you both show a willingness to remedy your own defects, there will be little need to criticize each other. We women carry with us a picture of the ideal man, the sort of chap we'd like our husbands to be. It is the most natural thing in the world, once his liquor problem is solved, to feel that he will now measure up to that cherished vision. The chances are he will not, for like yourself, he is just beginning his development. Be patient. Don't expect too much too fast. Slow the expectations down. Remember what I told you about expectations. That's jumping the gun. Another feeling we are very likely to entertain is one of resentment, that love and loyalty could not cure our husband's alcoholism. There are some family members who do get angry over the fact that AA can do what they can do. They feel like a loser. They feel like they're not in control of the home. We do not like the thought that the contents of a book or the work of another alcoholic has accomplished in a few weeks that for which we struggled for years. At such moments we forget that alcoholism is an illness over which we could not possibly have had any power. Your husband will be the first to say it was your devotion and care which brought him back to the point where he could have a spiritual experience. Without you, he would have gone to pieces long ago. When resentful thoughts come, try to pause and count your blessings. After all, your family is reunited, alcohol is no longer a problem, and you and your husband are working together toward an undreamed of future. Still another difficulty is that you may become jealous of the attention he bestows on other people, especially alcoholics. That is common. What's the difference? You're never home. In the beginning, it's necessary because nothing's going to help more for the alcoholic than helping other alcoholics. You have been starving for his companionship, yet he spends long hours helping other men in their families. Remember, this guy is new. There's another chapter again stating that 12-step work is important to recovery. You feel he should now be yours. The fact is he should work with other people to maintain his own sobriety. Sometimes you'll be so interested that it becomes really neglectful. Your house is filled with strangers. You may not like some of them. He gets stirred up about their troubles, but not at all about yours. It will do little good if you point that out and urge more attention for yourself. We find it a real mistake to dampen his enthusiasm for alcoholic work. You should join in his efforts as much as you possibly can. We suggest that you direct some of your thought to the wives of his new alcoholic friends. They need the counsel and love of a woman who has gone through what you have. It is probably true that you and your husband have been living too much alone, for drinking many times isolates the wife of an alcoholic. Therefore, you probably need fresh interest and a great cause to live for as much as your husband. If you cooperate rather than complain, you will find that this excess enthusiasm will tone down. Both of you will awaken to a new sense of responsibility for others. You as well as your husband ought to think of what you can put into life instead of how much you can take out. Inevitably, your lives will be fuller for doing so. You will lose the old life to find one much better. And I can tell you this, in the beginning, it seems as if it's AA, Al-Anon, AA, Al-Anon, meetings, new friends, sponsorship, and eventually with time, most lives mushroom and grow. Not all people who come into this program remain active forever. It's a reality. Perhaps your husband will make a fair start on a new basis, but just as things are going beautifully, he dismays you by coming home drunk. If you are satisfied he really wants to get over drinking, you need not be alarmed. Though it is infinitely better that he have no relapse at all has been true with many of our men. It is by no means a bad thing in some cases. In other words, there's some things known as a therapeutic slip. That's what they're saying. Your husband will see at once he must redouble his spiritual activities if he expects to survive. You need not remind him of his spiritual deficiency. What caused the relapse? Spiritual deficiency. He will know of it. Cheer him up and ask him how you can be still more helpful. The slightest sign of fear or intolerance may lessen your husband's chance of recovery. In a weak moment, he may take your dislike of his high-stepping friends as one of those insanely trivial excuses to drink, the peculiar, queer thoughts that precede a relapse into drinking. We never try to arrange a man's life so as to shield him from temptation. They're telling us this again. The slightest disposition on your part to guide his appointments or his affairs so he will not be tempted will be noticed. Make him feel absolutely free to come and go as he likes. This is important. If he gets drunk, don't blame yourself. God has either removed your husband's liquor problem or he has not. If not, it had better be found out right away. Then you and your husband can get right down to fundamentals. If a repetition is to be prevented, place the problem along with everything else in God's hands. We realize that we have been giving you much direction and advice. We may have seemed to lecture. If that is so, we are sorry, for we ourselves don't always care for people who lecture us. But what have we related is based upon experience, some of it painful. We had to learn these things the hard way. That is why we are anxious that you understand and that you avoid these unnecessary difficulties. So to you out there who may soon be with us, we say good luck and God bless you. Then it gives you an explanation about Al-Anon and when it was founded. The terrible devastation that has occurred as a result of alcoholism in the home. I could start giving you statistical data. About 75 to 80% of the court cases come to court because of alcohol. The abuse cases, the victimization of children, the runaways, the incest, all dealing with alcoholism. Number one major problem in our country today is alcoholism, not drug addiction. The only reason drug addiction gets more headlines is because it's illegal. Alcoholism is killing more people, causing more problems, costing our gross natural product more money than anything else, and we're the least interested in it as a society or a culture. We believe we should imprison everyone. That's the mistake. One day we're going to find out that treatment was better. We spent years and years, the old-timers in this program. When I came in here, we were told from the very beginning, we've got to get something over to these judges to make them realize that alcoholism is a treatable disease. We've got to get them to confirm the fact that treatment is better than jail. And we did. And it was by the example of those people who were here years before us, who came through the court system. And now that we've won that little victory and the judges agree with us, they send people here with slips of paper, and now those people who never had to work for that privilege sit down and complain, and they say, people are not coming in the right way. By God, if you got a slip of paper, you've given a gift certificate. And the old-timers before us worked to have that done in a court system. They have achieved a victory, and those people who didn't work for it are now complaining about it. It's because of the recovery of the old-timers ahead of us who made an impression on that judicial system that some of you are here. That's it for this session. Chapter 9, the family afterward. We just finished the chapter to wives. Now we're going to talk about the family. And I think you're going to gain a lot of information from this chapter about what alcoholics should, or as families, and should not do. Our women folk have suggested certain attitudes a wife may take with a husband who is recovering. Perhaps they created the impression that he is to be wrapped in cotton wool and placed on a pedestal. Successful readjustment means the opposite. All members of the family should meet upon the common ground of tolerance, understanding, and love. This involves a process of deflation. The alcoholic, his wife, his children, his in-laws, each one is likely to have fixed ideas about the family's attitudes toward himself or herself. Each is interested in having his or her wishes respected. We find the more one member of the family demands that the others concede to him, the more resentful they become. This makes for discord and unhappiness. And one of the first things it's telling the family in here is don't place demands upon each other and create resentments. Why? Resentments is the number one offender. It may get the alcoholic drunk. And why? Is it not because each wants to play the lead? Is not each trying to arrange the family to show to his liking? Is he not unconsciously trying to see what he can take from the family rather than give? That's exactly what we covered on page 62. Cessation of drinking is but the first step away from a highly strained abnormal condition. In other words, the second thing they're saying is when an alcoholic isn't drinking, that's an abnormal condition for them. They only feel normal when they have alcohol in their system. A doctor said to us, years of living with an alcoholic is almost sure to make any wife or child neurotic. The entire family is to some extent ill. The second thing you can put down there is this is a family disease. Let families realize as they start their journey that all will not be fair weather. Each in his turn may be footsore and may struggle. There will be alluring shortcuts and bypaths down which he may wander and lose the way. Suppose we tell you some of the obstacles a family will meet. Suppose we suggest how we may be avoided, even converted to good use for others. The family of an alcoholic longs for the return of happiness and security. They remember when father was romantic, thoughtful, and successful. Today's life is measured against that of other years, and when it falls short, the family may be unhappy. Well, in that paragraph, number 3, what they're going to be telling you is some of the pitfalls that you're to avoid, all right? Family confidence in dad is rising high. The good old days will soon be back, they think. Sometimes they demand that dad bring them back instantly. God, they believe, almost owes this recompense and a long overdue account. But the head of the house has spent years in pulling down the structure of business, romance, friendship, health. These things are now ruined or damaged. It will take time to clear away the wreck. Though old buildings will eventually be replaced by finer ones, the new structures will take years to complete. Let's say over there I put number 4 is you're going to have a reconstruction period ahead of you. It's going to take time. This is laying the groundwork for future as to which way the family should go and the father. Father knows he is to blame. It may take him many seasons of hard work to be restored financially, but he shouldn't be reproached. Perhaps he will never have much money again. But the wise family will admire him for what he is trying to be rather than for what he is trying to get. And I put for number 5 over there, materialism versus spiritualism. That's what they're saying in that paragraph. Now and then the family will be plagued by specters from the past, for the drinking career of almost every alcoholic has been marked by escapades funny, humiliating, shameful, or tragic. The first impulse will be to bury these skeletons in a dark closet and padlock the door. The family may be possessed by the idea that the future happiness can be based only upon forgetfulness of the past. We think that such a view is self-centered and is in direct conflict with the new way of life or living. In other words, it's telling the family to share the secrets of the past also. Just like alcoholics share with one another, families should share also. Henry Ford once made a wise remark to the effect that experience is a thing of supreme value in life. That is true only if one is willing to turn the past to good account. We grow by our willingness to face and rectify errors and convert them into assets. The alcoholic's past thus becomes the principal asset, and frequently it is almost the only one. Remember in the beginning of one of these other chapters it said we can be uniquely useful to the alcoholic because of our experience? That's what you have to share in the very beginning of your program. In the early stages of recovery, your drinking experience. This painful past may be of infinite value to other families still struggling with their problem. We think each family which has been relieved owes something to those who have not. And when the occasion requires, each member should be only too willing to bring former mistakes, no matter how grievous, out of their hiding places. Showing others who suffer how we were given help is the very thing which makes life seem so worthwhile to us now. Cling to the thought that in God's hands the dark past is the greatest possession you have, the key to life and happiness for others. With it you can avert death and misery for them. And the fifth thing I have written on the side of that, number 5, is the family should practice 12-step work also as a family unit. Now we seem to have been gotten away from there. There seems to be a bit of snobbishness in AA. Alcoholics think all they're supposed to do with work with alcoholics. Al-Anons think they're just supposed to work with Al-Anons. Alateens are supposed to work with just Alateens. And we find out that in the very beginning of this program, the founders of this program stated unequivocally that this is a family disease and the family must be treated. It's easier for a person to get well if the whole family is being healed rather than just one person. It is possible to dig up past misdeeds so they become a blight, a veritable plague. For example, we know of situations in which the alcoholic or his wife have had love affairs. In the first flush of spiritual experience, they forgave each other and drew closer together. The miracle of reconciliation was at hand. Then, under one provocation or another, the aggrieved one would unearth the old affair and angrily cast its ashes about. A few of us have had these growing pains, and they hurt a great deal. Husbands and wives have sometimes been obliged to separate for a time until new perspective, new victory over hurt pride could be rewon. In most cases, the alcoholics survive this ordeal without relapse, but not always. So we think unless some good and useful purpose is to be served, past occurrences should not be discussed. And I put on the side of that paragraph number 6, don't discuss old issues. You may get the alcoholic drunk. Don't bring up the past and constantly throw it into his face. In the beginning of recovery, you know, alcoholics are very thin-skinned. You have to be careful of that. If you have a sponsor who knows anything about the program, they will tell you, even when you're going to AA meetings, you have to develop a thick skin. We families of Alcoholics Anonymous keep few skeletons in a closet. Everyone knows about the other's alcoholic troubles. This is a condition which in ordinary life would produce untold grief. There might be scandalous gossip, laughter at the expense of other people, and a tendency to take advantage of intimate information. Among us, these are rare occurrences. We do talk about each other a great deal, but we almost invariably temper such talk by spirit and love and tolerance. And another principle we observe carefully is that we do not relate intimate experiences of another person unless we are sure he would approve. We find it better when possible to stick to our own stories. A man may criticize or laugh at himself and it will affect others favorably, but criticism or ridicule coming from another often produces the contrary effect. Members of a family should watch such matters carefully, for one careless, inconsiderate remark has been known to raise the very devil. We alcoholics are sensitive people. It takes some of us a long time to outgrow that serious handicap. And on the side of those 2 paragraphs, I put number 7, stick to your own experience unless given permission to speak about others. Stick to your own experiences. You're better off. Don't be telling things about other people or other families in this program. Many alcoholics are enthusiasts. They run to extremes. At the beginning of recovery, a man will take as a rule one of 2 directions. Here they go. He's going to tell you about the 1 or 2 directions a person in recovery will take. And the first part is going to be describing one part, and the second part of this chapter, the second. He may either plunge into a frantic attempt to get on his feet in business, or he may be so enthralled by his new life that he talks or thinks of little else. In either case, certain family problems will arise. With these, we have experience galore. And I put number 7 on the side of that paragraph, one of 2 choices, economic or spiritual. That's where he's going to go. He's either going to start trying to make a lot of money, or he's going to talk incessantly about spiritual things. And sometimes the family has to bite their tongue either way. We think it dangerous if he rushes headlong at his economic problem. The family will be affected also pleasantly at first as they feel their money troubles are about to be solved, then not so pleasantly as they find themselves neglected. Dad may be tired at night and preoccupied by day. He may take small interest in the children and may show irritation when reproved for his delinquencies. If not irritable, he may seem dull and boring, not gay and affectionate as the family would like him to be. Mother may complain of inattention. They are all disappointed and often let him feel it. Beginning with such complaints, a barrier arises. He is straining every nerve to make up for lost time. He is striving to recover fortune and reputation and feels he is doing fine, or very well. And on the side of that paragraph, I put warning number 8, halt. Don't get too hungry, too angry, too lonely, or too tired. Now, how many people do you know of, and I have met many, thousands of people since I've been in AA. I hear them speaking about it. They come to AA for a week or 2 weeks, and next thing you don't see them anymore, and you say, hey, Joe, you haven't been going to any meetings. I know, I have a second job. Well, why do you have a second job? Well, you know, during my drinking, I neglected the family and the bills and everything else, and I have to have this second job to make up the money, to pay the bills. Slow it down a little bit, Joe. If you stay sober one day at a time for the rest of your life, your bills are going to be taken care of gradually. And his enthusiasm, no, he needs it. You don't see him anymore, and the next thing you know, there's problems at home too. Because when a guy's too hungry, angry, lonely, and tired, the relationship at home suffers also. And next thing you know, you hear Joe's out drinking again. And all that extra money he had and everything goes down the tubes anyway. Easy does it. Sometimes a mother and children don't think so. Having been neglected and misused in the past, they think Father owes them more than they are getting. They want him to make a fuss over them. They expect him to give them the nice times they used to have before he drank so much, and to show his contrition for what they suffered. But Dad didn't give freely of himself. Resentment grows. He becomes still less communicative. Sometimes he explodes over a trifle. The family is mystified. They criticize, pointing out how he is falling down on his spiritual program. And warning number 9 for the family, I put, avoid criticism. It creates resentment. This sort of thing can be avoided. Both father and family are mistaken, though each side may take some justification, have some justification. It is of little use to argue and only makes the impasse worse. The family must realize that Dad, though marvelously improved, is still convalescing. They should be thankful he is sober and able to be of this world once more. Let them praise his progress. Let them remember that his drinking wrought all kinds of damage that may take long to repair. If they sense these things, they will not take so seriously his periods of crankiness, depression, or apathy, which will disappear when there is tolerance, love, and spiritual understanding. Now I put for the 10th warning down there, all right? You have to have some family members talking to other family members to give them the warning signs. It's telling you what's going to happen to that alcoholic in recovery. There's going to be periods of crankiness, depression, or apathy, which will disappear when there is tolerance, love, and spiritual understanding. If a person who's in treatment does not get his family into treatment, and he comes home and he's demonstrating these symptoms, those family members may think they're the only family who's going through that. And they're telling you from the very beginning that this guy is going to have some peaks and valleys in his recovery. We know that. In our own recovery, we know sometimes we're on top of the world, and the next thing you know, sometimes we're down. A lot of people speak about the hypoglycemic theory in that, and that's a contributing factor. But there's some contrary opinions as to what is occurring, and that's another subject that we deal with in treatment where I work at another time other than through the big book. The head of the house ought to remember that he is mainly to blame for what befell his home. He can scarcely square the account in his lifetime, but he must see the danger of over-concentration on financial success. Now underline this. This next statement is very important, and plant it in your head and repeat it a couple of times a day. Although financial recovery is on the way for many of us, we found we could not place money first. Although financial recovery is on the way for many of us, we found we could not place money first. For us, that means recovering people, material well-being always followed spiritual progress, it never preceded it. For us, material well-being always followed spiritual progress, it never preceded it. So in other words, the two directions a person goes when he recovers in here, one is material, the other is spiritual. It's telling you, their recommendation is here that you go for spiritual progress previous to material. That's your statement there. So now we're going to start going into the spiritual recovery. Since the home has suffered more than anything else, it is well that a man exert himself there. He is not likely to get very far in any direction if he fails to show unselfishness and love under his own roof. We know there are difficult wives and families, but the man who is getting over alcoholism must remember he did much to make them so. The 12th warning, all right? You start practicing this program at home. The 12th thought, start bringing the program home. As each member of a resentful family begins to see his shortcomings and admits them to the others, he lays a basis for helpful discussion. These family talks will be constructive if they can be carried on without heated argument, self-pity, self-justification, or resentful criticism. Little by little, mother and children will see they ask too much, and father will see he gives too little. Giving rather than getting will become the guiding principle, and I put the 13th suggestion there as practice unselfishness. Now, a lot of families, and we used to say this in our discussion meetings, and when I was married, we tried to do it. We tried to set one day a week where all members of the family would be present at the dinner table. One day a week at least, because some kids are out playing ball and some are in soccer leagues and wrestling and everything else. But one day a week set aside for you to be with your family. And during that time, you have a family night. You do things together as a family. That vastly improves the relationships with each other. It's important. Now assume, on the other hand, that father has at the outset a stirring spiritual experience. Overnight, as it were, he is a different man. He becomes a religious enthusiast. He is unable to focus on anything else. As soon as sobriety begins to be taken as a matter of course, The family may look at their strange new dad with apprehension, then with irritation. There is talk about spiritual matters, morning, noon, and night. He may demand that the family find God in a hurry or exhibit amazing indifference to them and say he's above worldly considerations. He may tell mother, who has been religious all her life, she doesn't know what it's all about, and that she had better get his brand of spirituality while there's yet time. Right? 14, allow him to do what he wills. As far as spirituality is concerned, it's going to help him. When father takes this tack, the family may react unfavorably. They may be jealous of a God who has stolen dad's affections. While grateful that he drinks no more, they may not like the idea that God has accomplished a miracle where they failed. They often forget father was beyond human aid. They may not see why their love and devotion did not straighten him out. Dad is not so spiritual after all, they say. If he means to right his past wrongs, why all this concern for everyone in the world but his family? What about his talk that God will take care of them? They suspect God, Father, is a bit balmy. And on the side of that paragraph, I put, be careful of spiritual intoxication. He is not so unbalanced as they might think. Many of us have experienced dad's elation. We have indulged in spiritual intoxication like a gaunt prospector, belt drawn in over the last ounce of food, our pick struck gold. Joy at a release from a lifetime of frustration knew no bounds. Father feels he has struck something better than gold. For a time he may try to hug the new treasure to himself. He may not see it at once, that he has barely scratched the limitless load which will pay dividends only if he mines it for the rest of his life and insists on giving away the entire product. Don't try to do everything in one day. Number 17. You practice this program for a lifetime. If the family cooperates, Dad will soon see that he is suffering from a distortion of values. He will perceive that his spiritual growth is lopsided, that for an average man like himself, a spiritual life which does not include his family obligations, we may not be so perfect after all. If the family will appreciate that Dad's current behavior is but a phase of his development, all will be well. In the midst of an understanding and sympathetic family, these vagaries of Dad's spiritual infancy will quickly disappear. And on the side of that paragraph, I put number 18, include the family in your spirituality. The opposite may happen should the family condemn and criticize. You notice in the beginning of this, even though it's in deep spirituality, they're constantly reminding us not to criticize that alcoholic. A lot of people don't understand that, but that's important. He wants everybody to hug him and enjoy his recovery. And when he gets anything negative, he can't handle it. And if a person is not getting family treatment in a family program, they're not going to be aware of this. They're going to sit down and think he's no different sober than he was drinking and become confused in his recovery. Why should I stay with him or her? They're the same as they were when they were drinking. This information is important to family members. How many people in their recovery had a family member who attended sessions with them? Did they have family program where you were? Very important to have it. Did your family come for you? Good. The opposite may happen should the family condemn and criticize. Dad may feel that for years his drinking had placed him on the wrong side of every argument, but that now he has become a superior person with God on his side. If the family persists in criticism, this fallacy may take a still greater hold on Father. Instead of treating the family as he should, he may retreat further into himself and feel he has spiritual justification for so doing. 19th, don't drive the alcoholic to self-pity. Though the family does not fully agree with Dad's spiritual activities, they should let him have his head. Even if he displays a certain amount of neglect and irresponsibility towards the family, it is well to let him go as far as he likes in helping other alcoholics. In the beginning, let him go as far as he likes in helping other alcoholics. Underline the next 3 lines. During those first days of convalescence, this will do more to ensure his sobriety than anything else. Underline that twice. During his first days of convalescence, this will do more to ensure sobriety than anything else. Helping other alcoholics. Helping other people is the best thing you can do. And I want to tell you something. I have yet to read in the program of the founders who laid out AA for us at making coffee and setting up chairs and doing things like that is 12-step work. It relates directly to another person. It doesn't say the tables and chairs and coffee pots. Though some of his manifestations are alarming and disagreeable, we think Dad will be on a firmer foundation than a man who is placing business or professional success ahead of spiritual development. He will be less likely to drink again, and anything is preferable to that. Again, re-emphasizing work with another alcoholic. Those of us who have spent much time in a world of spiritual make-believe have eventually seen the childishness of it. This dream world has been replaced by a great sense of purpose, accompanied by a growing consciousness of the power of God in our lives. We have come to believe He would like us to keep our heads in the clouds with Him, but that our feet ought to be firmly planted on earth. That is where our fellow travelers are, and that is where our work must be done. These are the realities for us. We have found nothing incompatible between a powerful spiritual experience and a life of sane and happy usefulness, the 4th dimension of existence. He would like us to keep our head in the clouds with Him, but that our feet ought to be firmly planted on earth. Do you see that in the middle of that paragraph? What do they mean by that, our head in the clouds and our feet on the earth? The 11th step, practice the 11th step, prayer and meditation. Keep our head in the clouds. Why do we say in the clouds? When we think of heaven, where do we think of? When we think of God, where do we think of? Above us. In other words, keep our mind up there with God, but our feet down on the ground doing the legwork. One more suggestion. Whether the family has spiritual convictions or not, they may do well to examine the principles by which the alcoholic member is trying to live. They can hardly fail to approve these simple principles, though the head of the house still fails somewhat in practicing them. Nothing will help the man who is off on a spiritual tangent so much as the wife who adopts a sane spiritual program, making a better practical use of it. I put for number 22 over there, the family should practice the steps also. There will be other profound changes in a household. Liquor incapacitated father for so many years that mother became head of the house. She met these responsibilities gallantly. By force of circumstances, she was often obliged to treat father as a sick or wayward child. Even when he wanted to assert himself, he could not, for his drinking placed him constantly in the wrong. Mother made all the plans and gave the directions. When sober, father usually obeyed. Thus mother, through no fault of her own, became accustomed to wearing the family trousers. Father, coming suddenly to life again, often begins to assert himself. This means trouble unless the family watches for these tendencies in each other and comes to a friendly agreement about them. And 23, let him handle some affairs temporarily. You know why I say temporarily? The biggest complaint I hear by alcoholics who recover, they start recognizing how much money they were making over the years. And the first thing they start doing is they come back to the spouse, whatever gender it may be, male or female. What the heck you been doing with all the money? Don't you know how to handle a checking account? Here on in, I'm going to handle a checking account. Give it to him. It'll only last 2 or 3 months, and he'll find some excuse to give it back to you. I've watched it over the years. I have counseled hundreds of women and told them, when he comes here and he starts doing that, give it to him. Check it out. You better do the work over because it's not going to be done thoroughly anyway. You know, that's the first complaint they have. What have you been doing with all the money? See? I'm going to take control. And after 2 or 3 months, he's right back there saying, well, I think you ought to handle it. I'm tied up over here. He soon finds, you know, I watch my wife, and I don't know how many nights she does this. I'm sitting there watching television. She's got her checkbook and her old checks and everything else. She's constantly going through the bills and everything. I don't want that. Hey, if that's part of your plan, you can have it. I'd just as soon have somebody else doing the paperwork. Drinking isolates homes from the outside world. Father may have laid aside for years all normal activities, clubs, civic duties, sports. When he renews interest in such things, a feeling of jealousy may arise. The family may feel they hold a mortgage on Dad so big that no equity should be left for outsiders. Instead of developing new channels of activity for themselves, mother and children demand that he stay home and make up for the deficiency. 24, allow the alcoholic to become involved in the community and clubs. Let them also develop some activities. At the very beginning, the couple ought to frankly face the fact that each will have to yield here and there if the family is going to play an effective part in a new life. Father will necessarily spend much time with other alcoholics, but this activity should be what? Balanced. New acquaintances who know nothing of alcoholism might be made and thoughtful consideration given their needs. The problems of the community might engage attention. What do they mean by that? Become active in the community. Maybe PTAs or church organizations or something. Though the family has no religious connections, they may wish to make contact with or take membership in a religious body. And they're going to start suggesting here, number 25, getting back to church. Alcoholics who have derided religious people will be helped by such contacts. Being possessed of a spiritual experience, the alcoholic will find he has much in common with these people, though he may differ with them on many matters. If he does not argue about religion, he will make new friends and is sure to find new avenues of usefulness and pleasure. He and his family can be a bright spot in such congregations. He may bring new hope and new courage to many a priest, minister, or rabbi who gives his all to minister to our troubled world. We intend the foregoing as a helpful suggestion only. They consider it a helpful suggestion. So far as we are concerned, there is nothing obligatory about it. As non-denominational people, we cannot make others' minds for them. Each individual should consult his own conscience. This next paragraph I'm going to read, I got number 27. I have number 27, start enjoying life. We have been speaking to you of serious, sometimes tragic things. We have been dealing with alcohol in its worst aspect. But we aren't a glum lot. If newcomers could see no joy or fun in our existence, they wouldn't want it. We absolutely insist on enjoying life. We try not to indulge in cynicism over the state of the nations, nor do we carry the world's troubles on our shoulders. When we see a man sinking into the mire that is alcoholism, we give him first aid and place what we have at his disposal. For his sake, we do recount and almost relive the horrors of our past, but those of us who have tried to shoulder the entire burden and trouble of others find we are soon overcome by them. And under that other thought, enjoy life, I put under the same number 27, avoid the Messiah syndrome, where you're going to cure everybody's ills. You're going to be everything to everyone. I rode with my sponsor one day to an automobile, and I was talking to him about the state of the nation and a few other things. And he said to me point blank, he said, Bill, if I read the newspaper and it did to me what it does to you, I would quit reading the newspaper. I said, what do you mean, Dan? He said, we've been riding in this car for 20 minutes and all you've been doing is complaining about the president and Congress and the governor and your councilmen and all your representatives. He said, you can't change any of that. Why would you want to read all of that and get your head all confused and irritate you like that? Why don't you just read the comics and enjoy the paper? You know, I quit doing that. I quit becoming a conversation at the meetings of politics and, you know, like they say, armchair quarterbacks. You ever watch a football game? Every guy sitting down there or woman over there that's a football buff knows what the coach should have done. But they didn't have to make the decision, just criticize it. So we think cheerfulness and laughter make for usefulness. I use a program that I present, a program on overcoming anger, and an awful lot of this is in there. John knows, he went through there, right? Laughter to overcome anger. It works. Just to give you a quick demonstration, laugh, Bruce. Go ahead. Laugh. Juanita, laugh. Even if you force it, it works. Even if you force it, it works. So we think cheerfulness and laughter make use for usefulness. This is number 28. Put a little enjoyment into your life. Humor. Outsiders are sometimes shocked when we burst into merriment over a seemingly tragic experience out of the past. But why shouldn't we laugh? We have recovered and we have been given the power to help others. I had an aunt who was in a program because her husband was there, and she invited her sister to go to an AA meeting with her. And while we were there at that AA meeting, somebody came up with a tragic event that occurred in her life, and we learned to laugh in AA about some of these things. And she left that meeting and never went back to another one. She could not understand we were laughing at. She could not understand, why would you possibly laugh at that? You know, we know there's a deep seriousness about it, but we can't carry it around like a rock on our back. So we put a lot of levity into our program. Everybody knows that those in bad health and those who seldom play do not laugh much. So let each family play together or separately as much as their circumstances warrant. We are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. We cannot subscribe to the belief that life is a vale of tears, though it once was just that for many of us. But it is clear we made our own misery. God didn't do it. Avoid then the deliberate manufacture of misery, but if trouble comes, cheerfully capitalize it as an opportunity to demonstrate His omnipotence. And for 29, I put down after that paragraph, conscious contact with God. Now it's going to go into another area. We're going to talk about health. Now about health. A body badly burned by alcohol does not often recover overnight, nor do twisted thinking and depression vanish in a twinkling. We are convinced that a spiritual mode of living is a most powerful health restorative. We who have recovered from serious drinking are miracles of mental health, but we have seen remarkable transformations in our bodies. Hardly one of our crowd now shows any mark of dissipation. But this does not mean that we disregard human health measures. I take a physical every year. I have to. My wife's got about 6 policies on me. And be careful of my diet, too. God has abundantly supplied this world with fine doctors, psychologists, and practitioners of various kinds. Do not hesitate to take your health problems to such persons. Most of them give freely of themselves that their fellows may enjoy sound minds and bodies. That part is a little dubious for me today. They give freely. It's a little rough to believe that today. Try to remember that though God has wrought miracles among us, we should never belittle a good doctor or psychiatrist. Their services are often indispensable in treating a newcomer and in following his case afterward. I am a firm believer, and I'm very heavily involved in the program of recovery that AA presents as far as the spiritual way of life. But I have always professed in all the years that I have been in the field that between 3 to 5 years of sobriety, every alcoholic should go into some type of intensive therapy or expansion beside AA therapy, maybe retreats over here or something. Why? Those of you who will be around the fellowship for a number of years will notice that we have an awful lot of people who come into AA for the first, second, and third year. And they're all enthusiastic, and they have the novelty of AA in their lives. And then between the third and the fifth year, we start losing our membership. I don't know what happens there. Boredom sets in, monotony or something, and we start losing them. I've often said to people, if you overcome the fifth year, your chances of staying sober vastly improve. Go to an AA meeting sometime, have your home group, have them take a survey. How many people here 25 years and on down the line? And you'll see the membership is basically 1 to 3 years. Most groups, 1 to 3 years. Then we start losing them. And a new group comes in. Now this next thing, I have number 30 listed here, is a little controversial today, but I want to tell you this. You understand one of the reasons we're going through this process and coming back to the big book is because the recovery rate was much higher than it is today when we were using this program. That's the whole basis for this seminar that we're doing now. The whole basis for it. We're trying to get people into the big book. Because you're into the big book and you've read it and you understand it and you had a presentation here, does that mean you're going to stay sober? No, because you have to be motivated first. And when you are motivated towards sobriety, you will know it because you won't be playing games anymore. You'll start putting structure into your life. You'll get new goals, new ideas. And if that doesn't occur, all the big books in the world don't help you. But one thing we did learn is when we went to the meetings and I came into AA, we had candy at every table. And everybody came in would eat candy. And in the last 10 years, it's become taboo. Hypoglycemic theory. Somebody came out with that. If you eat sugar, it's going to throw you up in a cloud someplace and you're going to come down and relapse. I am still a firm believer. If nothing else is working for you and you feel like you're going to take a drink, by God, go to the refrigerator and get yourself a half a gallon of ice cream or a big glass of orange juice and Karo syrup or something, but pump some sugar into you. You're better suffering the effects of a sugar increase than you are depression and possibly drinking. There's a lot of people who believe that booze puts the sugar into the body in the first place. But look what this doctor says. One of the many doctors who had the opportunity of reading this book in manuscript form told us that the use of sweets was often helpful, of course depending upon the doctor's advice. He thought all alcoholics should constantly have chocolate available for its quick energy value at times of fatigue. He added that occasionally in the night a vague craving arose which would be satisfied by candy. Many of us have noticed the tendency to eat sweets and have found this practice beneficial. Are they lying? No, they're sharing experience. But today, it seems as if professionals have overcome this. One of the problems I had at one of the last rehab units I had in Cleveland was the board had several professionals who were placed on it. They told me they didn't want the guys smoking anymore. They didn't want them drinking caffeine. They didn't want them using sugar. They didn't want them doing everything. I said, wait a minute here. I want to tell you a story my sponsor told me. He said, Bill, I met a man, he cut out drinking. Then he cut out smoking. Then he cut out eating. Then he cut out girls. Then he went to the state hospital cutting out paper dolls. Easy does it. First things first, let's take care of the alcohol problem. Then we'll start expanding into these other areas. First things first, let's take care of the alcohol first. A word about sex relations. Alcohol is so sexually stimulating to some men that they have overindulged. I don't know if they mean alcohol or sex, but somewhere along the line they overindulged. Couples are occasionally dismayed to find that when drinking is stopped, the man tends to be impotent. Unless the reason is understood, there may be an emotional upset. Some of us has had this experience only to enjoy in a few months a finer intimacy than ever. There should be no hesitancy in consulting a doctor or psychologist if the condition persists. We do not know of many cases where this difficulty has lasted long, and today there's more and more clinics available to deal with that issue. They deal with it very well. I have only met 7 men that I've had to refer to a sexual impotency clinic. The alcoholic may find it hard to reestablish friendly relations with his children. That's it. This is important. Their young minds were impressionable while he was drinking. Without saying so, they may cordially hate him for what he has done to them and to their mother. You know, we think we're doing things behind closed doors. The children are sometimes dominated by a pathetic hardness and cynicism. They cannot seem to forgive and forget. They may hang on for months, long after their mother has accepted Dad's new way of living and thinking. In time they will see that he is a new man, and in their own way they will let him know it. When this happens, they can be invited to join in morning meditation, and then they can take part in a daily discussion without rancor or bias. From that point on, progress will be rapid. Marvelous results often follow from such a reunion. How? By bringing the family into a spiritual way of life. This program has emphasized, re-emphasized, emphasized, and re-emphasized that the whole family unit should become spiritual. When you see that occur in a family, you'll see a successful recovery. When you see splintered parts of it, you hear people sitting down, well, my kid's out there drinking, doing his thing, you know. I guess I had to go through it too. Spirituality may have helped. I can't guarantee it, but I've seen these families. I've seen these families recover. Now, this next page that we're going to cover is some information that probably you will be aware of and a big membership of Alcoholics Anonymous is not aware of. This next page that we're going to cover has the slogans that are so popular in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. These slogans were not given to the alcoholic. What chapter are you reading? The Family Afterward. Let's see how the slogans apply to the Family Afterward and how we start using them just for alcoholics. The application is to the family members of the alcoholic. Whether the family goes on a spiritual basis or not, the alcoholic member has to if he would recover. If your family does not want anything to do with spirituality, you must if you are to recover. Who was saying to me the other day, they said there are no musts in AA? Every other paragraph we read 2 or 3 musts. Must means must. Must does not mean maybe. It doesn't say whether the family goes on a spiritual basis or not, the alcoholic member may have to. It says must. He is to recover. The others must be convinced of his new status beyond a shadow of a doubt. Seeing is believing to most families who have lived with the drinker. Here is a case in point. Now they're going to go into a case history of a spiritual recovery. One of our friends is a heavy smoker and coffee drinker. There was no doubt he overindulged. Seeing this and meaning to be helpful, his wife commenced to admonish him about it. You know what admonish means? Chew him out. He admitted he was overdoing these things, but frankly said that he was not ready to stop. His wife is one of those persons who really feels there is something rather sinful about these commodities, so she nagged. Why don't you give up that coffee and cigarettes already? Why don't you give it up? Why don't you give it up? I can hear it. And her intolerance finally threw him into a fit of anger. What happens when we get resentments and anger? He got drunk. Of course our friend was wrong. Drinking is not the solution to any problem. And it's telling you, if you drink, of course you're wrong. How can anybody drink after they've been through this chart? How can anybody possibly think a drink will solve a situation when we find out physically you're incapable of metabolizing it, and the mental obsession does nothing more than take you back to a relapse? Don't drink alcohol, you're okay physically. Follow the program, you become all right mentally. There's no reason in the whole wide world anybody's been through this seminar can say, I had a legitimate reason to use alcohol or drug. Cocaine takes you through the same pattern, same process, except for one difference. Cocaine is out of your system in a day. That's why they won't detox coke addicts. You have no retention of the chemical in your body. A lot of people don't know that. They won't take me because I'm a drug addict. They'll take you if you're a drug addict depending on what drug you use, but cocaine goes right through your system. That's why you have to keep going back for it. Of course our friend was wrong, dead wrong. He had to painfully admit that and mend his spiritual fences. Though he is now a most effective member of Alcoholics Anonymous, he still smokes and drinks coffee. But neither his wife nor anyone else stands in judgment. She sees she was wrong to make a burning issue out of such a matter when his more serious ailments were being rapidly cured. Now it says in this chapter to the family afterward and to this wife who nags, we have three little mottos which are apropos. Here they are. First things first. Live and let live, easy does it. They're telling that to the family. First things first, take care of the alcohol problem. Don't worry about the coffee and cigarettes, alcohol. Live and let live. If you don't like it, drink coffee and cigarettes, let him have it. And easy does it. Don't push him too soon. Exactly what my sponsor told me. So you have grasped and read and grasped a lot of information that probably you were not aware of. It was in this big book in the chapter The Family Afterwards. How many things did we have? I forgot, I lost count. About 31 or 32 issues there. There's 31 or 32 issues it's telling the family they should and should not do. It's telling you the direction the alcoholic's going to go into. He's either going to become established in trying to develop a job, work relationship with an employer or something to get a lot of money, or he's going to become over spiritual. It's telling you to join clubs and churches and have your life expand. It's telling you how to handle your children. There's a lot of information in here. This is only a summary of it. You can expand on it. What do you believe a happy family, or how do you believe a happy family should live? Then start developing that way. It's that simple. Now in the beginning, Alcoholics Anonymous is going to be the most important thing in your life. But eventually your life should mushroom. And I can't tell you when that'll be. For some people it's 3 to 5 years, some people it's 6 years, some people 10. But I'll guarantee you this, and there's a couple of guys here that have been here a long time, not everybody's going to stay active in AA. They were never intended to. If everybody who came into AA sobered up and stayed active in AA, we wouldn't have enough room in the Coliseum. And I'm not telling you to quit. The biggest mystery in my life today is why I'm still going to AA and doing what I'm doing. I never planned on it, believe me. I came here to get the monkey off my back. Now that's the session for this morning. All right, we're going into the last chapter that we're going to be doing in this big book seminar. And the chapter is A Vision for You. Now, why do you think they wrote a chapter, A Vision for You? When was this book started being written? 1937 by 40 people. When it's printed, it's 1939, and there are 100 sober alcoholics. All they have now is 100 people between Akron, Cleveland, and New York, generally, three areas. And they have a book that is published. And it's not like Alcoholics Anonymous is today. What their vision is a vision for you, as they're looking down the road and they're hoping to have what we have today. See? What did I hear last night? There's something like 900 groups just in Cleveland. No, that's far beyond their expectations. So a vision for you is really their dream of what Alcoholics Anonymous can become. And here's what they write. For most normal folks, drinking means conviviality, companionships, and colorful imagination. It means release from care, boredom, and worry. It is joyous intimacy with friends and a feeling that life is good. But not so with us in those last days of heavy drinking. The old pleasures were gone. This is what they're speaking about when they say, if you still think there's a giggle in a bottle, you're going to get it. When alcoholism becomes an illness and liquor a pain, you're going to know exactly what they're writing in this paragraph. They were but memories. Never could we recapture the great moments of the past. There was an insistent yearning to enjoy life as we once did, and a heartbreaking obsession that some new miracle of control would enable us to do it. There was always one more attempt and one more failure. The less people tolerated us, the more we withdrew from society, from life itself. As we became subjects of King Alcohol, shivering denizens of his mad realm, the chilling vapor that is loneliness settled down. It thickened, ever becoming blacker. Some of us sought out sordid places, hoping to find understanding, companionship, and approval. Momentarily we did, then would come oblivion and the awful awakening to face the hideous four horsemen: terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair. Unhappy drinkers who read this page will understand. Anybody who's suffering from their addiction is going to understand what they're saying. But if you giggle about it and you think there's fun in using, you don't understand what they're saying here. This life will seem boring and dull to you. Now and then a serious drinker, being dry at the moment, says, I don't miss it at all, feel better, work better, having a better time. As ex-problem drinkers, we smile at such a sally. We know our friend is like a boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits. He's trying to convince himself of this. He fools himself. Inwardly, he would give anything to take a half-dozen drinks and get away with them. He will presently try the old game again, for he isn't happy about his sobriety. He cannot picture life without alcohol. Someday he will be unable to imagine life either with alcohol or without it. Then he will know loneliness as such as few do. He will be at the jumping off place. He will wish for the end. About 4 of us were riding to a meeting years ago, and the topic of conversation was the problems created by drinking. And one fellow said, if I could go out drinking tonight and know that I wouldn't go to jail, lose my job, and get divorced or end up beat up and sick, I would go out tonight. And the other 2 fellows seemed to join him. And I'm in the process of building a new way of life, and I'm not saying too much. And he said, how about you, Bill? I said, I don't think so. They said, you mean to tell me if you could drink and not have the problems you had because of alcohol previously, you wouldn't go out drinking? I said, I don't think so. They said, why not? I said, I am so happy with the way my mind is functioning today and the way that I feel. I would be afraid, even if it didn't cause a problem, that alcohol would affect that. That's what this program has to offer. Until you experience it, you can't believe it. But if you do want it, and you put forth the effort, it's going to occur. Believe me. I tell people, there's no way in the world anybody could tell anyone sitting in this room, male or female, where your life is going to go as a result of working these steps in your life. Any more than I knew where my life was going to go. You people haven't heard my whole story. But I'll tell you this much. I will guarantee each and every individual in this room excluding not a single one. I will tell you where your life is going to go if you go back to using. I tell you what's going to happen to you. You're either going to die, go nuts, or go to jail, or live a life of misery. And maybe one day, 10 years from now, you come back and say, if only I had. Listen to the speakers who relapse. I wish I had listened the first time. You're not different than them. That's the last lecture I'm giving. We have shown you how we got out from under. You say, yes, I'm willing, but am I to be consigned to a life where I shall be stupid, boring, and glum? And some people are stupid, boring, and glum not even because of alcohol. Like some righteous people I see, I know I must get along without liquor, but how can I? Have you a sufficient substitute? Who thinks that AA is a life of being boring and glum? I'll tell you a boring and glum life. 5:30 in the morning you awaken and you walk 2 blocks away from your home and you go to a bar room and you sit on the bar stools where all the other people are either coming from or going to work, and you're begging for a drink to the barmaid. And the owner of the bar comes by and says, when I see a young man like you in here begging for booze, I'm sorry I bought into the bar business. Please don't give me a lecture, give me a drink. No more credit, no more money. To do everything possible to get drink, to hang around a bar room all day and be a hanger-on, a sponge some people call it, and do odd chores around there, not to take money home to buy clothes or anything, just to drink. And then go home and maybe sleep a couple hours in the afternoon and come back and start the process all over again. You think that's a happy way of life? It happened. Yes, there is a substitute, and it is a vastly more than that. It is a fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous. There you will find release from care, boredom, and worry. Your imagination will be fired. Life will mean something at last. The most satisfactory years of your existence lie ahead. Thus we find a fellowship, and so will you. How is this to come about, you ask? Where am I to find these people? Why do you think they're asking, where am I to find these people? This book might be out in Washington State someplace. And there's no fellowship around them. It says, where am I to find these people? Always remember, when this chapter is written, there's only 100 people sober in the whole United States, in 3 cities. You are going to meet these new friends in your own community. Near you, alcoholics are dying helplessly like people in a sinking ship. If you live in a large place, there are hundreds. High and low, rich and poor, these are future fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous. Among them you will make lifelong friends. You will be bound to them with new and wonderful ties, for you will escape disaster together, and you will commence shoulder to shoulder your common journey. And you will know what it means to give of yourself that others may survive and rediscover life. You will learn the full meaning of love thy neighbor as thyself. It may seem incredible that these men are to become happy, respected, and useful once more. How can they rise out of such misery, bad repute, and hopelessness? The practical answer is that since these things have happened among us, they can happen with you. See the hope they're presenting to people reading this book? Should you wish them above all else and be willing to make use of our experience, we are sure they will come. The age of miracles is still with us. Our own recovery proves that. Our hope is that when this chip of a book is launched on the world tide of alcoholism, defeated drinkers will seize upon it to follow its suggestions. Can we read that again? Let's all read those 3 lines together. Our hope